today, geometry, we are covering sine, cosine, and tangent today. Those three little buttons up at the top of your computer, up above the numbers, they say sin, cos, and tan on your calculator, but they really stand for sine, cosine, and tangent. And kind of throwback to yesterday, who can tell me what you need to remember about your calculator and doing sine, cosine, tangent, that if you don't, it will end in certain disaster? Alexis. Yes, your calculator must be in degree mode. There are three modes to it: degree, radian, and gradient. All three are used to measure different things. The degree mode is used to measure degrees, and that's what we are measuring here. So make sure it's in degree mode. And yeah.
What if it's not?
If it's not, then there should be a mode.
It is in, but like what
if it's not, there should be a mode button you can press and select. I can show you later on, or if you realize on test day that you don't have it in degree mode, come up and ask me, and I will remind you on test day also. But the purpose of sine, cosine, tangent is, we know what to do with side lengths if we know two of them, Pythagorean theorem. We know what to do if we have 45, 45, 90 triangle over 30, 60, 90, because it has, pretty easy to work with ratios. Where things get troubling is when you've got a 17 degree and a 73 degree triangle. Okay? What are the ratios of that? Mr. Link and I were talking after yesterday's lesson, and I had said that before calculators became mainstream, they did have to calculate all of these ratios themselves, and he was telling me that, it was a big deal when Texas Instruments first came out with a device that would do this for you. And so consider yourselves very, very blessed. What a time to be alive. Calculators that do sine, cosine, tangent for you. But when we're talking about sine, what is the ratio? What is the proportion you are using with sine? Jack?
Opposite over hypotenuse.
Opposite over hypotenuse. And what do the words opposite and hypotenuse refer to? What are we talking about? The opposite what?
Opposite
sides. Okay, opposite and hypotenuse refer to the sides. Yes, we did. Very good. Went follow along. Cosine. What is that ratio for cosine? Beckman.
Opposite?
No. Adjacent over hypotenuse. These ratios are all key points. I highly recommend you getting them on a help sheet. Again, the word adjacent means next to. And we'll see some examples of that as we go through these questions here. And tangents. What does tangents refer to, Anthony?
Opposite over adjacent.
Opposite over adjacent. So your first decision here, and by the way, this is where that soka toa phrase comes from. So, sine, opposite over hypotenuse. Ka, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Toa, tangent, opposite over adjacent. And your first job when given a triangle and asked to solve for a side using sine, cosine, tangent is what ratio am I using? Right? What do I set up? And that's where we look at the given angle, the angle that we're using, because quite frankly, that gives us all the information that we need. Okay? So in this example here, we are given this 56-degree angle. And the first question you ask yourself is, from that angle, right? From the angle that we know, what is the location of the side that we know? Now we're given side X and we're given side 13. The side we know is 13, right? What is that location? Is it opposite the angle, adjacent to the angle, or is it the hypotenuse?
Adjacent.
It is adjacent. And you know that because to find the opposite side, just draw a line out from that 56-degree angle. We're going to hit the X side. Okay, the 13 is next to it. It is the adjacent side. The hypotenuse is its own special thing, right? It's that side that's always opposite the 90-degree angle. And then from that angle we know, from that 56, the location of the side we want to find is opposite. That side X, what we want to find is opposite that 56-degree angle. Okay? And really, the order that you write these words in doesn't make a difference. It's which ratio includes both adjacent and opposite. And we decided that was tangent. But the tangent ratio does have the opposite side as the numerator. And so even though we wrote adjacent first, we're still going to put the opposite side as the numerator because that's how the tangent ratio works. Okay, so the order of these don't make a difference. If you're using tangent, it's always opposite over adjacent, whether it's the side you know or not. Right? Now setting up this proportion, now that we've decided it's going to be tangent, that tangent ratio, which can abbreviate TAN, in front of that angle, so tangent of 56, just filling in the pieces here, right? Over 1 equals the side over the side. Well, the side over the side is the opposite over adjacent. That's how yesterday we got x and 13. And as with any proportion, what's your go-to method to solving this?
Do you always put the tangent on the top?
Yes, the ratio always goes in the numerator. All right. What's our process for solving this?
Put the tangent thing in your calculator.
Yeah, so we're using cross products here, right? But tangent of 56, well, what is that? So this is where you go to your calculator, you make sure that no one's pranking you and change it to radian or gradient, right? But calculate tangent of 56. So you're going to press the tan button, you're going to type in 56, close your parentheses, and you're going to get a decimal because these ratios aren't very pretty. That's why we have sine, cosine, tangent to help us, okay? And we came up with what,
19.27.
That was the final answer. What was the tangent of 56?
1.48.
1.48. So the proportion that we're solving is 1.48 over 1 equals x over 13. From here, we go to cross products, right? We multiply 1.48 by 13. That equals x, and we get 19.24 as an answer.
Yep.
Okay?
You didn't get that.
Any questions on that process? See how quickly we can go through this if you just let me blab?
Well, yeah, we already did this.
Well, that's true. All right. Let's go to the second page. We got some more. And let's do the third one down here, that 53-degree angle. Okay?
Where?
Third one on the second page, that 53-degree angle. Remember, these first 3 steps are simply to decide which ratio we are going to use. You can't set up the proportion
They have a leg.
unless you know what ratio you are going to be using here. Okay? It all starts with that angle that you're given. From that angle, what is the location of the side we have? Is it opposite angle 53? Is it adjacent to angle 53? Is it the hypotenuse? Alexis.
Opposite.
It is opposite. The side we have is that 11 side,
How's that opposite?
because from angle 53, if I were to draw,
Oh, I got you.
I would hit that side.
Well, unless you do it straight.
Yes, that is true. I'm going to do that. Alex,
What do you want to use the hypotenuse?
the hypotenuse is always the side opposite the right angle. It'll never be the opposite side, never be the adjacent side. It's a specific side of the right triangle. Just like in the Pythagorean theorem, how do you know what C is? C is always the hypotenuse, that longest side. It's always the side that is across from the right angle. Okay? So the side we have, that 11, is opposite. The side we want, that side X, what's the location of that side? Kylie.
Adjacent.
It's not the adjacent, it's the hypotenuse.
Oh.
The hypotenuse is that special side of a right triangle. It's always across the right angle. It will never be the opposite side. It will never be the adjacent side. Opposite and adjacent are only for the legs. The hypotenuse is its own special thing. Is it adjacent? Is it next to our angle here? Yes, it is. But being the hypotenuse trumps that. It's that special. Okay? Now, knowing that we're using the opposite and the hypotenuse, what ratio is that? What ratio includes opposite and hypotenuse? Sine does. Okay? So we are using that sine ratio, right?
That's creepy.
In our, now I
How
text
do we know
box
it's
it. Anyway. Okay, how do we know it's sine? Damien, someone help him out. How do we know it's sine? Kylie.
Because sine is the only one that has opposite over hypotenuse.
Yes, sine is the only ratio that includes both opposite and hypotenuse. That's why this part, steps 1 and 2, is so important. knowing the location of those sides based on the location of that angle, that's going to clue in on what ratio to use. Yeah.
When you set up the proportion, does X always have to go in the
No, the setup of the proportion depends on which ratio you are going to use. The sine ratio is always opposite over hypotenuse. Doesn't matter which one's x, which one's the side we know. It's always opposite over hypotenuse. So in this case, okay, our proportion is going to be sine of that angle 53. It's pronounced sine.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Sin.
Over 1. The opposite side is 11. The hypotenuse is x. So sometimes x will be the numerator, sometimes x will be the denominator. It really just depends on what ratio are you using and what's that setup. Okay? Now, before we get to cross products, we have to figure out what the sine of 53 is. So here's where you go to your calculator, make sure it's in degree mode. And what is the decimal nearest hundredth of sine of 53? Joey, do you have it? Was it? 0.8?
What is?
0.7.
Okay? Make sure that you calculate that correctly. Sine 53, close your parentheses. Damien?
I got the answer.
Okay, go ahead.
13.7.
And how'd you come with that?
I multiplied 1 times 11.
Okay?
Okay, so you get 11 there, obviously. And then I divided that by 0.79. 0.79 if we're going to be exact. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. And then we got 13.77.
Okay.
Well,
Now,
if you
on
did it
this-
correctly,
On
you
this
could
test,
have
depending on
done
how you round, you should round to the nearest hundredth, which would be 0.8. But if you didn't and you got 13.75, or if you, I'm not going to mark it off. Or if you did round and got, if you're as long as you're within like 2/10, okay, then you'll be fine there. So don't focus too much on the rounding. When you do round, make sure you're at least going to the nearest hundredth. Don't round to the nearest tenth. Don't round the nearest whole. That'll take you too far off. Nearest hundredth is where you want to go. Okay. Beckman.
How do you know which one to put 11
Sorry?
How do you know if you put 11 over X or 11?
What is the sine ratio?
Opposite over hypotenuse.
Opposite over hypotenuse. Always. What is the opposite side? The opposite side is 11. What is the hypotenuse? Hypotenuse is x. That's how you know it. You follow the ratio. That's why SOHCAHTOA can be so helpful, right? SOHCAHTOA is a nice, catchy little abbreviation that tells you the order that the side should be put in. Sine is always opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is always adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan is always opposite over adjacent. Alex, you need to work on raising your hand. Go ahead. That was not you, Alex. Okay.
I was talking to myself.
Very well. Then work on talking quieter. Yes, Dan.
On 12 to 41, or the first one, I got the number 1, it was opposite, and then number 2, I have 2 questions. And then side you want, how do we know what is that called a leg, or what is that called? Oh, that's adjacent, right?
So this first one here, the angle 41, the side we have, Damien said it's opposite. Do we agree with that, Vince? What?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, from the given angle from 41, the side we have, that 12, is the opposite side. Okay? The side we want, well, the only options left are adjacent or the hypotenuse. Is it the hypotenuse?
No.
No. So it's got to be adjacent. And we can verify that because adjacent means next to is that x next to our angle of 41. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay? So decide which ratio to use. The only ratio with opposite and adjacent is tangent.
Tangent. Thank you.
And the order of that ratio is always opposite over adjacent. Never will it be the other way. So when it comes to how do I set this up, what goes on top, where does the x get placed? Well, x being the adjacent side, that's going to be in the denominator here, right?
Does it matter though? Really?
Yes, it does. Because if you flip that second fraction, it's going to change the cross products, right? So it does make a difference.
But how do I know what's gonna be at the bottom?
So it's tan of 41 equals.
Because the tangent ratio is always
Oh.
opposite over adjacent.
Yeah, but the x is I got you.
Okay? Always opposite over. That's why we label them. Okay? That's why we label them. So that we can apply those labels in the equation. Questions on how we got this set up? Yeah. What is tangent of 41?
3.71.
Was it?
I've got it.
Oh,
You
it's
said
tangent of 41. Never mind.
86.
0.87? Does it round up to 0.87 or no?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
That's
So
what
0.87 over 1 equals 12 over x. Cross products to solve.
13.79.
0.87x equals 12 times 1, which is just 12. Divide both sides by 0.87. And Joey, what did you say?
13.79.
Do we agree?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
When you get 13.
Nearest hundred.
Would you count 13?
So what's the thousandths digit? The one after? Okay. If it's, I'm assuming he rounded correctly, but he rounded to the nearest hundred.
Would you count 13.8?
I would.
Yes.
Okay, try and do the next one on your own. Okay, take a look at those sides, run through the steps, decide what the ratio is, pay attention to what the ratio is, and the order of that fraction, and then set it up and see if you can go the entire way and solve it. Do you have a question? Catherine, do you have a question? No. Do not touch SOHCAHTOA. Okay? Do not touch SOHCAHTOA. Maybe it would help if I wrote it not straight horizontal like that, but like this. SOHCAHTOA. Okay? Well, which ratio are you deciding to use? What are the locations of the sides? Okay, so yeah, 26 is the hypotenuse. So that's the side you have. Yep. But remember, so initially, which ratio is the hypotenuse and the opposite side? So you're choosing the side right now.
Oh, wait.
That's always opposite over hypotenuse. So regardless of order that
7, 9, and 7.
if you have the hypotenuse, you have the other side, you're using sine, and this is only one corner. Opposite will always go forward.
Come on.
So the order of
Go to the next one.
the answers to 1 and 2 don't really matter. In the sense that it tells you what ratio is. Then you look at the ratio and say, okay, what order do I put those in? So where am I?
Still not the same. It's
It is. No, it's not. You're using sine.
Do the X side.
Always opposite.
So it doesn't matter what these are. Oh, okay.
Yes. There will be book homework.
Why?
Okay, so the side you have is the opposite side. The side you want is the adjacent side. Any questions on how I got either of those? Based on opposite and adjacent, we are using the tangent ratio, which is always the opposite side over the adjacent side. It would not matter if this was adjacent, this was opposite. The order that you put these in doesn't make a difference. This is just designed to tell you which ratio to use. Then you look at the ratio and say, oh, opposite is always my numerator. Okay? So setting this up now, we have the tangent of 58. Our opposite side is 22. our adjacent side is x. Okay. What is the tangent of 58? 1.6. So 1.6 over 1 equals 22 over x. Cross product to solve. What do we end up with? 13 point what? 75. Okay. Now with this, it is kind of nice. We can kind of check our answer here. Who can give me a reason why it makes sense that x is 13.75? Remember, geometry is like a puzzle. This has to fit together. What evidence in the triangle tells you that 13.75 is a reasonable answer here? Please hold.
It's 20. On our page, it's. Oh, can we get the book homework? I was on the wrong.
Oh, Brandon.
Because like the angle degrees, you can find them, and then the one that we don't have is the smallest, so that you know that x would be the smallest side.
Yeah. So based on the angle measures, this would be 32 degrees here, right? Maybe we read the 32. This side x has to be the shortest side of the triangle. Okay, this would be the short leg here. And 13.75 is less than 22. It makes sense there, right? This would be the medium side, because 58 is between 38 and 90, and I didn't find the hypotenuse, but that would have to be the longest side. Thank you, Damien, for that reminder. Okay? All right, so the bottom one, the last one here.
No, I got it.
We're still going to do it. We'll do it quick.
I got it. Can I walk?
Joey, what's the side we have?
Hypotenuse.
We have the hypotenuse. What's the side we want?
Adjacent.
Adjacent. Which ratio includes hypotenuse and adjacent? Cosine. Okay. Now, the cosine ratio.
Wait, what?
I'm rolling.
Wait, what? The cosine ratio is always written as adjacent over hypotenuse. Even though we have hypotenuse and adjacent in that order here, that doesn't matter. That's only for you to decide which ratio to use. Then you look at what's the order of that ratio. It's always adjacent over hypotenuse. So when we set this up, cosine of 39 over 1 equals adjacent, which is x, over hypotenuse, which is 26. Okay? So don't pay attention to the order up here, just pay attention to what they are. Pay attention to the order when you decide what ratio you want to use. And then what is cosine of 39? 0.78. So 0.78 over 1 equals x over 26. Essentially, you're just multiplying the 78%, finding 78% of 26, or 0.78 times 26. And what do you get? 20.28. 20.28. Okay? Which, hey, it's less than the 26, which has to be the longest side. That makes sense. It's a reasonable answer. Alexis.
Oh, on the test, should we always round to like
100, please. 100. Okay? Other questions on this?
No. Please.
Your assignment.
We got 4.5 on the homework on the check.
Not on sine cosine tangent, you didn't.
That's crazy. Who got wrong?
Not on sine cosine tangent, you didn't.
No, I tried.
Let's see.
Why don't you seem like a leprechaun day gift? And it's not like it's doing homework.
Well, it's not leprechaun day yet.
It's my birthday tomorrow.
Well, is it leprechaun day already?
Yeah.
Leprechaun day? Yeah.
On page 470, you are to do 18 through 20. And then, because that's only using tangents, on page 478,
How do you know that?
Yeah, be quiet.
you are to do. Oops. I did it right there.
March Madness.
10 through 15.
10 through 15, are you kidding?
10 through 15.
Let's break this puppy up.
All right, that is how you math. Like and subscribe.